Hello and welcome to the Water from the Rock podcast, where you can get a fresh drink for life. This is Tyler Robbins, of course, as always, and once again, as always, we have Pastor Robbins with us today, and then we have Levi back today from work. Anyway, as we get in here, we're going to talk more about family unity. We're going to talk about, just kind of following up a second part of what we talked about last week. Last week we talked a lot about what to do when your child's angry, what to do in different situations about rebellion, how to keep your family together, how to keep a marriage together. And once again, kind of a review here, I know that a lot of these subjects are going to be more in-depth seminar-style subjects where you can teach several lessons, so we're just going to be given a basic overview. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about time management. We're going to revisit a little bit about rebellion today, and just kind of how to deal with family struggles, and kind of deal with a little bit about family sins that kind of affect children that can be traced back to anywhere in your family heritage. So anyway, if you've never tuned in before, I'd like to welcome you, and if you have anybody returning here listening, I'd like to also say welcome back. It's always great to have a good following. And anyway, so Pastor Robbins, as we start looking here at time management, what do you think is one of the biggest things that can really inhibit a father from feeling completed in his time?
Well, time management is that's something that you've got to learn to you just really stay on top of. With the way things are today, it's easy to get distracted and waste time. And I'm kind of at the point now where I kind of like the sit in the recliner. And as I said in church here not too long ago, used to be I was one of those people that wanted to go and explore and go through the mountains and stuff. But now I'm a little more content just to sit on the recliner and watch it on television and that. So time is certainly something that's you got to really kind of stay on top of. And Tyler, I've taught you this, but there's a rule that an old time preacher had given, and I think that's probably one of the most valuable things that I've ever come across is concerning time management. And if you like, I can go ahead and share that with you now. And
go for it.
Okay, all right. Well, the basically what he said was this: is he said most people are on an average have about 100 hours a week. You're awake for maybe a little bit more than that, but by the time you factor out showering and getting ready and that kind of thing, you're roughly left with about 100 hours a week. And so what he taught was the 70-20-10 rule. Right? So 70 hours go towards work, 20 hours go towards family time, and 10 hours go towards personal time. And so what I've, like Tyler, you remember I might have taught you, or remember you teaching you this.
Yeah, I remember I was going over this because I had this problem a lot early on, just feeling like I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't being a good father, wasn't being a good family figure. Anyway, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. And so basically, an average person is going to work 40 to 45 hours a week, okay? And they're spending about 40 to 45 hours a week. And if you count into that drive time and sometimes a little bit more, depending on the person, if you're working more in a management position, you might work 50 to 60 hours a week. When I worked with Walmart, we were scheduled 52, but realistically, 60 was about more accurate at most times and that kind of thing. And then what I would say is then the remainder of that time goes towards church time, serving the Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
And so put the rest of that to where you total up a total of 70 hours. So if you put 45 hours in a week at work, that gives you 25 hours left over for church time. Going to church, teaching a Sunday school class, making visits, doing things that are really church-related things, like maybe helping out on a project at the church. Go down and give a couple hours here and there to maybe work on a
building
issue
project or something.
Project.
Yeah,
sure, yeah, absolutely. And if you're more talented in the areas of like maybe media ministry, like you guys both are more involved in, that gives you free time to do things like posting videos on YouTube or the podcast or doing sound ministry, that kind of thing. And so you want to put it around 70-hour limit, okay? Then that gives you 20 hours a week to where you really spend with your family, and that should be quality time, and that's time where you're doing things together. Even if it's just sitting on the couch watching a movie together, or it's putting a model together with your son, or building your daughter's dollhouse for her, or something of that nature. it's just things that you're going to do where it's going to be family time together, and so a lot of times family time doesn't really turn into quality time. Most of the time, family time is that of late at night. We're watching a movie, or kids are watching something on television, dad's snoozing in the chair, and that's what we would call family time. And then the remaining 10 hours, or 10 hours of time, where you just kind of go out and you can spend some time alone. All right. Mm-hmm. Now everybody's different. I'm one of these people that if I spend a lot of time alone, it may help me spiritually, but it doesn't help me in the kind of my relationship side of things. Yeah. I need to make sure that I'm, I would rather cut out the time of missing personal time than I would anything else. Okay. Yeah. And so that's kind of the guideline that I follow. Now, it does create its problems, though. There's no doubt about it.
Well, how do you balance the fact of handing something off to, like, maybe a son, like a family business, and feeling lazy as a parent?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm kind of the place in the ministry where I'm trying to hand a lot of things off to my sons, but usually if you're following the Lord, the reason why you're handing it off because there's a new task at hand. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so before you hand something off, you want to kind of have a new role to kind of strive towards fulfilling. So, if, for example, you're in a business, and say you guys do an automotive business, or you're doing a construction business, and you're kind of getting the place where you don't swing the hammers like you used to, you don't turn the wrenches like you used to, and but yet your son or your sons can do that, and you're going to hand that off to them. You might move to more of an administrative role, or more of maybe you're going to kind of handle things as far as organizing and handling the advertising or whatever it may be. And if it's going to be a retirement role, it's going to be a retirement role. Yeah. And but you have to plan for that financially as well. So, but it's always good to try to find something that you can kind of a new role that's opened up. And if you're following the leadership of the Lord, that's the way that works out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And as far as like what we were talking about before, with the problems with the schedule, because sometimes work demands more time or church demands more time. Yeah. And so what I always did is, me personally, I cut out personal time. Okay. So if I need to put in, 80 hours in work and ministry, and then that leaves me 20 hours with family time. So I always would cut out. To me, the Lord was first, then family was second, then job, then me, okay? And now you have to pay your bills, so you don't want to cut out too much work time, you know what I mean? But
sure.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I have a question, though. Whenever you have, like, a situation where, like, last year we went to the races. You, me, Noah, Dustin, I believe, went, and Levi went with us, and we all piled in the car and went down to the sprint car races down there in the World Outlaws there in Knoxville. And when we went there, do you consider that personal time, or would you consider that family time? Because you're not really with your children. Well, you were, but I wasn't. But would you consider that personal time or family time, because you spent time with other members of your family?
Sure. To me, as personal time was with time that I would spend alone doing things that are really kind of more personally minded. Mm-hmm. Some people might say, well, you know what, let's put that personal time needs to be our prayer time. I kind of group anything serving the Lord, whether it's praying, studying my Bible, serving in church, going to church, I put that in the 70-hour box. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So if I spend 5 hours a week in prayer, all right? Yeah. If I spend 5 hours a week in prayer, and then I have, say, 3 hours a week in Bible study, that's 8 hours. Mm-hmm. And I worked 40 hours, so that's 48 hours. That leaves me with another, 22 hours that I can put. And then I'm going to go to church, and that's going to save me another 12 hours right there. Yeah. So I'm going to have 12 hours of church services and all the things that I'm doing in that, which is not much. So some people, they might go, oh my gosh, 12 hours of church a week. But, if you guys are going on your bus route on Sunday morning, you're there at 8 o'clock and you're there to 1, that's 8 to 1 right there alone. And then Sunday nights, you're there from 4, well, you, Levi, are there from 4:15 till about 8 o'clock that night or so. Mm-hmm. So between those two right there, you have, was that 5, and you almost have 10 hours in right there of church, and then Wednesday night would be a couple hours. And so it wouldn't be much to add that in, and so to me, I add all those things in. If I'm going out visiting, soul winning, that all counts as that. Whenever I was working secular work, now I work ministry. To me, I try to not go too many more than 70 hours, and there was times where I did, and now as I'm getting older, I'm finding that I don't fulfill the 70 hours a lot of times. If you count naps, maybe, but no, I'm teasing. But it's, when you work 6 days a week, hours do add up, and that's what I've always done. I've always worked 6 days a week, and so.
I see.
But does it make sense?
Yeah. Well, I know you're talking about the 70-20-10 rule. Is there a rule that you want to follow if you're retired and you have all that extra time on your hands?
Sure. Yeah. I think you need to give 90 hours a week at the church to serve. And no, I'm kidding you. If I were retired, I think I need to have at least 2 hours a day for golf, and or maybe 3, as slow as I move. And no, I'm kidding. But I think that. If you can, find something ministry related that you can put into a couple hours a day, or at least maybe a project to work on. Everybody's different.
Something.
Yeah, everybody's different. Some people they have to have a project, so they do here a little, they do here, there a little, as what we call it piddling. Like to piddle with it until you finally get it to go. Or try to finally. Other people they like a structure and a schedule. Like you boys know, your mom is very structure minded, so if she knows she's putting 2 hours in a day, that works for her. Me, I'm more of a project person. I feel like if I could put a little time in here, mess with it, and a little time in there, mess with it tomorrow, by the end of the week I got it done. That works better for me. Now, as your mom's, on the other hand, she would much rather go in 2 hours each day and know that she's putting her 2 hours in and be done. Whereas me, I'll just kind of go until I don't feel like messing with it anymore, and then move on to something else, and then come back and mess with that tomorrow or whatever. And everybody's different, and everybody works differently. But find what works for you, and follow that guideline. And now, as far as like what we were talking about before, Tyler, going to the races and this personal time, to me that was more family time because I was spending time with you guys and that. But as far as if I'm a parent of young children and I'm going with my parents to do something, but my children are staying home, I would call that personal time. I wouldn't call that, family time, because your kid, your son wasn't there, or your wife wasn't there. The people that would be in your immediate circle, the people that you want to spend most of your time with, that should be your family time. Okay, I'm not talking about your cousins or brothers or sisters or something like nature. If you're married, it's your wife, or your husband, it's your children, if you have babies, and that. Now, in one of the things like I've taught you before concerning this thing with schedule too, Tyler, you remember, is if you do something like that and you spend 20 hours on a personal time thing, then borrow that from the next coming weeks or whatever, and say, I ain't going to take any more personal time. I'm just going to make sure I have extra time to whatever it is I'm borrowing from.
Sure.
But do not forsake your family, and try not to forsake anything for the Lord too.
Absolutely. Real quick here, though, before we move on to a different topic, what does that stand for like single-parent homes? Like people who it's just a dad or just a mom. Do you follow the same 70-20-10 rule? What would be your recommendation for them?
I would, again, try to follow the same rule, but, when you're in a single-parent home, regardless if it's something you ordered up for yourself or not, it's just a difficult place to be. Some people, they've ordered up for themselves, and then they get into that and they're like, what did I do? And other people, you can't control the fact that somebody walks out. You can't control the fact that somebody dies or whatever it may be. You're just kind of in that situation, and God's ordered it up for you, and now you're trying to make the best of that. So to me, I try to keep that at a 70-20-10 as well. I think it works for them as well. But at the same time, though, because there's not a second parent there to be an extra set of eyes, an extra heart to feel, an extra voice to speak, or an extra, ears to hear, and that kind of thing, you kind of sometimes end up pulling double duty in those roles. And usually things then kind of your family tends to demand a little bit more of your time, and you'll find yourself cheating yourself usually, because we don't want to cheat the Lord. We feel guilty about that. We don't want to cheat our babies, and so then we end up kind of cheating ourselves of our personal time, try to kind of make ends meet. And it's hard. It's just really hard for folks who are in that situation, and that's just one of the unfortunate crosses that you bear excuse me, when you're in those situations, and it's a tough place. But I would try to do that. But every so often, you have to take time and go back and refresh. And again, if your 70-hour moments are, I'm spending time in prayer. What you'll find is this: is God gives you grace for your situation.
Yeah.
And so, though you might be carrying a heavier cross in some regards, that God will give you an extra amount of grace when you get to that prayer time, and it'll be a little richer for you. And and I find people who are in those situations, they have some of the greatest prayer lives, or they have some of the deepest understandings of the Word of God, or just there's something richer for them, and in that regard. So I tell them, try to keep following that same pattern as much as possible. But again, it has to be flexible. It cannot be set in stone. You can't say, well, you know what, I hit my 70 hours, I ain't doing any more in this church. Or I hit my 20 hours, sorry, wife, you're just going to have to wait till next week. You can't do that. It has to be flexible, okay? And just remind yourself that, what lacks this week, you'll probably pick up the next week or in the next few weeks. Does that help? Does that make sense?
So it's kind of more like a self-regulated rule kind of thing?
Yeah, it's just something that's just kind of it's not fluid, but it's moldable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's something that's just flexible. It's just a good guideline. It doesn't have to be set in stone. And
do you have any tips and tricks for people that have like a problem with self-control where they can't give themselves a guideline and a basis for what they're going to do the next week?
Accountability would help out a lot in that. And when you're in a self-control situation, it's always good to have somebody to be accountable to. And accountability helps out quite a bit on that. The Bible says to confess our faults one to another, pray for one another that we may be healed. And we just looked at that verse last night in church, if you remember. And so it's one of those things that whenever I come to, like, say, for example, I have a problem, I come to you, Levi, and I say, Levi, I have a problem kind of keeping control of something in my life, and I find myself getting lazy, or I find myself not reading my Bible like I should, or whatever it may be, and you go, you know what, I'm glad you told me that. And number one is it's gonna, every time I see you, I know you're gonna be thinking that and asking me questions about that. How's that going? And I know I'm going to have to answer that, and I could lie to you, but my conscience ain't going to let me down off of that. And number two, it also opens up another heart to pray for me. And so that becomes an extra level of prayer or grace, that whenever I pray for somebody and they've told me, hey, preacher, I'm struggling with this, I know specifically what to pray for. Like some different folks have been to doctors in recent weeks, and it's been kind of scary for them. And so when I'm praying, I don't go, oh, well, Lord, if you could give them a better job, or, Lord, I don't know what you could do for them. I know specifically what to say. Lord, they're going to be going to the doctor. They're nervous about this. Would you give them peace about it? Lord, let everything go well, that kind of thing. Do you understand? And so I know specifically how to pray, and so that when there's an accountability, and especially there's accountability between people who really are truly loving, and they're not judging. If some guys get together and they say, hey, fellas, we get together and we start talking, all right, these are our struggles, these are our weaknesses. Now we can say, hey, this is what we need to do, and we're all kind of a brotherhood against this thing, and it's more of a battle between a small army than it was individually.
That's why it's better to more confide in your church family than maybe in the world.
Oh, absolutely. The world will never understand it, number one. If they do understand, they understand it from a different wisdom. The Bible says the wisdom descendeth not from above, and so it becomes a wisdom that they don't see it. It's like looking at it from a different set of eyes, or like maybe a better choice is this would be a different set of glasses. Does that make sense? And if I'm farsighted and somebody gives me glasses for nearsighted, it's really going to mess me up. You know what I mean? And so, but if you give me the right glasses, it helps me. And that's what wisdom from the world is. It's looking at it from a position that doesn't help like you. And exactly. And so I would find somebody that's really more. And even with Christians, unfortunately today, a lot of Christians are so high and mighty and judgmental. The others are that of, well, we're all under grace, we do what we want to do. Yeah. It's hard to find a good, solid friend or a good, solid Christian in the Lord that you can kind of confide in, but God will give you one, and He'll give you one.
So, and I'm sure this also goes right along with people who are like yes men, people who can't really turn down projects, feel bad whenever they do, people who struggle with, people like that, where they just kind of,
Sure.
anytime you ever ask for something to get done, even if they're overwhelmed, they can't tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this kind of goes right along with that. Be careful not to invade your family time.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. One of the things that I would tell people that if they have a hard time saying no, get a good practice of saying, you know what, let me check with my spouse first. If it's a woman in the church, you know what, my husband, I need to confirm it through him first. Or if it's a man, so you know what, I'd love to help you, preacher, or I'd love to help, but let me check with my wife because, I want to make sure everything's good with her. And then, what that does is that immediately tells that person, oh, well, you know what, they may not be a go.
Yeah, it might be a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, it might not be a go for them. They might not be able to do that. And then number two is it also it shows consideration of your spouse, and it teaches them too that there's more to it than just you being a project person, and that you have a family you have to care for and contend for. And then if you talk to your spouse about it, and it's just going to be too much, can't really do it, then it's an added strength to say, you know what, I talked to my husband, I talked to my wife, and they really wasn't too on board with it. Is there any way I can pass on that right now, or is there somebody else you can find? And listen, there are some times where a pastor may try to say, hey, you need to do this, or whatever. I always tell people, be careful of pressure situations like that. I don't think preachers should be operating that way. However, though, with that being said, there are some times where preachers may say, thus saith the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
God has told me to tell you, you need to do this. And in that case there, you better do it. Does it make sense?
Exactly.
And if your pastor's one of those high pressure people, everything's falling apart, Chicken Little, sky's falling, and if you don't come in here and fix it, the whole world's gonna crash. And that's every time you turn around. I doubt that's gonna be a thus saith the Lord moment every time. I'm not saying it won't be. I'm just saying it's probably not gonna be. However, though, if he's had a reputation of that hey, I want to be considerate of your family. I want to be considerate of your time. And this is something that's really, I feel like, of the Lord. Then you know that, hey, you know what, we're just going to have to sacrifice something here, and we need to do this. And this is something I need to do, or whatever. You listen, you have the Holy Spirit of God inside of you. Ask Him. He'll give you clarity. I mean, we can't do anything without Him.
Exactly.
We can't do anything without Him.
So, real quick here, do you think that Samuel in the Bible would be a good example of a man who probably didn't balance his time very well, considering what happened to his kids?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, it's certainly possible. The Scripture doesn't really give out a whole lot of information there. We do see that his sons don't turn out so godly and so upright. It could be that, the old saying is the worst kids in the world were judges' kids and preachers' kids, and so the devil attacks those people hands down quite a bit. People who are in leadership or example positions,
target on their back.
They really do, and it's one of those things that those guys there, if you can destroy a preacher's kid, you can't maybe not destroy the preacher, but if you can destroy his kids, you really destroyed the preacher's message.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense, and if his wife is no longer really on board with him, it really hampers what he can do or how effective he can be. Because like for example, who wants to go to a person and say, "Hey, listen, can you teach me how to fix my marriage when their marriage is falling apart?"
Exactly.
Or can you help me raise my family, or show me what to do with my children whenever his kids hate him?
True.
It doesn't make me want to go to that person. I want to go to the person who has their son or their daughter's heart, that they've been really proven to be. Sometimes their kids are bad anyway, but you could tell they were a good parent.
Sure.
And that person there I want to listen to. I want to hear what they have to say, because there's a great amount of insight and wisdom. Whereas the guy who wasn't really a good parent, I'm not too interested in that. And that's what happens to a lot of preachers is looks.
Absolutely. Real quick here, we're running out of time, but I'd like to ask you one more question before we close this out. What do you think would be the number one thing that Satan is using to attack families, family unity, the children, just the husband and wife? What do you think is the one driving thing that Satan is using right now?
Boy, that's a great question. I mean,
It's a hard one, I know, but
I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb and say religion. I don't know if I would say. I mean, you could certainly argue entertainment, media, anything. I think, to be honest with you, probably religion would be the number one thing, because
False
it gives
religion.
exactly, it gives you a false sense of security, and it keeps you from being close to God. And because really, religion is a false thing. It's a false religion. You need a relationship with the Lord, and I think that's where it all balances. And so to me, I feel like that's the foundation. You might argue a self-image. You might argue there are a lot of other things, but to me, I think that's one of the foundations, at least. And so, but that is a hard question, and we've kind of all over the board today, but we kind of hit about every other side of the barn here. But but that's kind of to kind of sum it up. That's why I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of how I thought too. But we're kind of just trying to wrap up a little bit more of this family unity thing, and we might be doing a part 3. We don't know yet. We're gonna let the Lord lead on that. But if you have any questions about anything about family, family unity, family time management, how to protect your family, how to keep them from the snares of Satan, feel free to write us. Our address is 703 Milwaukee Street, Charles City, Iowa, 50616. Feel free to give us a call. Our phone number is 641-228-5362. Or feel free to reach out to us through email or through our website. Our email is fundamentalbaptist@yahoo.com. Or otherwise, you can also reach us once again through the website, bytheblood.org. And if you haven't been to our website yet, I'd strongly encourage you to go there. Like I said before, it's a huge archive of a bunch of different messages. We have somewhere about 100 to 150 messages uploaded from our service, and that's directly from what you hear our pastor preach in our church services. You hear people amen. You can hear everything going on. Otherwise, if you want to reach out to us through Twitter, you can get to me through Tyler Robbins. It's at Tyler Robbins. It's spelled TYLER ROBBINZ. Otherwise, you can also get to Pastor Robbins at TimAmy21, right?
Yes.
That is your handle? Okay,
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't set this stuff up forever. Otherwise, we do actually have official Calvary Baptist Church Twitter. It's at bytheblood1, the number 1. Feel free to reach out to us in any way, shape, and form. Once again, I hope that this has been a huge blessing to you. I know the Lord has really worked a lot through us. It's already kind of helped enlighten me and helped me remember how to be a better father, how to be a better parent. And I know that Levi has really helped him just understand what's to come in the future. Anyway, I want to thank you again, Pastor Robbins, for being with us here today. And once again, if you want to reach out to us, feel free to in any way, shape, or form. We offer free counseling. I'd love to work with you in any situation that you have. Or if you just have a question you want answered through the podcast, feel free to contact us once again in any of those facets. Once again, this is Tyler Robbins from Calvary Baptist Church, reminding you the Lord loves you. Have a great day.